Hello, everyone. I invite you to listen to the story. My husband, earning $3 million a year, divorced me for making only $4,000 a month. I stayed calm and did one thing. The next day, he called me frantically. The dinner I had set out that evening had grown completely cold. A layer of fat had congealed on the surface of the slow-cooked beef stew. 7 years of my youth, dedicated entirely to nurturing our family, and all I received in return was a cold, detached gaze from the man who shared my bed. What cruel fate was hidden within the thin sheets of paper lying starkly on the glass table? After 7 years as Vincent's wife, I never thought a day would come when I would sit across from him in such a miserable, ironic situation. Our sprawling mansion, located in a wealthy enclave of the Hamptons, was always flooded with magnificent, warm lighting. But tonight, that luxurious glow only brought a bone-chilling coldness. On the dining table was the meal I had painstakingly prepared since the afternoon. They were all nutritious, comforting dishes that Vincent used to love. A bowl of slow-cooked beef stew, a platter of steaming roasted salmon, and a few light vegetable sides. Now, everything was stone cold. The layer of fat coagulating on the stew was just like the affection between us over the past 7 years depleted and frozen solid, though I didn't know exactly when it happened. The harsh sound of a car engine echoed in the driveway. The sound of the door opening, followed by familiar footsteps striking the high-end marble floor. Vincent stepped into the house. He wore an expensive tailored suit, a sleek silk tie, and carried the faint scent of a high-end designer cologne mixed with the aroma of fine wine from his corporate networking parties. Vincent didn't look at the meal I had put so much effort into, nor did he bother to glance at the devoted wife who had been sitting and waiting for him for 4 hours. He walked straight to the dining table, pulled out a chair, and sat down heavily. His posture was exhausted, but his eyes were piercingly cold and utterly decisive. Vincent reached into his alligator skin briefcase, pulled out a stack of pristine white papers, and slammed them onto the glass table in front of me. The dry, harsh sound shattered the silence of the massive house. I looked down. Two bold words struck my eyes immediately: divorce petition. I looked up at my husband. The face of the man I had dedicated my entire youth to loving and supporting now clearly displayed calculation and ruthless pragmatism. Vincent cleared his throat, adopting the authoritative demeanor of a CEO whose tech company was about to go public on the stock exchange. "Explain everything clearly," I said. My voice was so calm that even I was surprised. There was no panic, no weeping, just an enveloping icy chill. Vincent adjusted his collar, looking straight into my eyes with an arrogant, condescending glare. "Chloe, we are simply no longer compatible to walk the same path. As you can see, my career is skyrocketing. The company is preparing for its IPO, and my status now is completely different. I need a wife who can socialize, who can stand beside me at elite high-society galas, someone with a business mindset to discuss corporate strategies. And you? For the past 7 years, you've just hovered around the kitchen. The gap in our intellect and worldview has grown too large. To be blunt, we no longer belong in the same social class." I gave a pale, bitter smile and replied, "The same social class? How exactly do you define that right now?" Vincent sneered, dropping heartless words that cut into my soul like a knife. "Look at reality, Chloe. My current income is $3 million a year. $3 million. Do you even understand how massive that number is? And you? Before you quit your job to stay home as a housewife, your monthly salary was a mere $4,000. That gap cannot be bridged by diligently cooking meals or sweeping the floor. I need a true partner, not a high-priced maid carrying the title of a wife." Vincent's words were crisp, articulate, and devoid of any lingering affection. He spoke of the income disparity, mocked my starting point, and belittled the years I willingly stepped back to be his solid foundation so he could build his empire in peace. I knew the underlying reason wasn't just about money or intellect. A wife's intuition, combined with information I had quietly gathered recently, told me Vincent was having a secret affair with Tiffany, a young, beautiful, and sharp female executive. Tiffany gave him a sense of novelty. She provided the pride of conquering a brilliant rose in the corporate world, something a wife in sweatpants at home like me could never offer. Seeing my silence, Vincent seemed to think I was feeling pathetic and terrified. He softened his voice slightly, taking on the posture of a superior bestowing charity. "I am not a completely heartless man. Over the past 7 years, you did take care of the family and look after my parents. I have prepared a youth compensation fund for you. $150,000. That amount is enough for you to put a down payment on a small condo in the suburbs and start some petty retail business. Just sign the papers. Let's part ways amicably. Don't make a scene. It's not good for my public image right now, and it won't benefit you either. You can't fight me, Chloe. $150,000. That number echoed harshly in my head. Vincent intended to use $150,000 to kick me out of the house, sever a 7-year marriage, and wipe away all the effort I had poured into him. But what made resentment surge within me wasn't the humiliation of the present, but the tragic memory of 7 years ago. Back then, Vincent was just a young man with big dreams who had failed miserably. His first startup went bankrupt. He took on massive debt and was hunted by loan sharks to the point where he didn't dare step foot outside his cheap rental apartment. Vincent's parents in the Midwest were poor and couldn't help, and his friends turned their backs on him. When he was so desperate, he wanted to end his own life. I was the one who reached out to save him. I went back to my parents in upstate New York, falling to my knees to beg them to save their son-in-law. My parents, hardworking generational farmers, gritted their teeth and sold their ancestral farmland. The only legacy our family had to scrape together exactly $150,000 to bring to the city to pay off Vincent's debts. Thanks to that blood money, Vincent kept his life and had the capital to start over. In return, to give my family and me peace of mind, Vincent wrote a notarized agreement that year granting me 10% equity in his newly established company. Now, he was throwing exactly $150,000 back at me, like an ungrateful beggar tossing leftover scraps back to the person who saved him from starvation. He forgot that without my family's ancestral land, there would be no arrogant CEO making $3 million a year today. There would be no multi-hundred-million-dollar company preparing for an IPO. I stared blankly at the divorce petition. I tried to suppress the outrage boiling in my veins. Not a single tear fell. My heart had gone completely cold. Crying and begging for the pity of a traitor is the most pointless thing in this world. I took a deep breath and picked up the expensive fountain pen Vincent had conveniently placed next to the paper. "Are you absolutely sure about this decision?" I asked one last time, my voice flat, holding no trace of an attempt to hold on to him. Vincent nodded firmly. "Very sure. Sign it, Chloe. Don't waste each other's time anymore. I still have a lot of work to handle for the company." I uncapped the pen and decisively signed my name at the bottom right corner of the page. The sharp strokes of my signature didn't tremble in the slightest. That signature completely ended 7 years of my foolish youth, ended the days of unconditionally serving his family, and ended the pathetic endurance used to cultivate a fake happiness. After signing, I pushed the papers back toward Vincent and handed him my bank account routing number. "Transfer the compensation directly into this account. Tomorrow morning, at exactly 8 a.m., meet me at the Manhattan Family Court to finalize the paperwork. I don't want this to drag on for another day." Vincent froze slightly. Perhaps he hadn't expected me to be so obedient and decisive. Deep down, he had probably prepared scripts where I would cry, beg, cling to him, curse at him, or even demand more assets. My calmness made him feel a bit deflated. His eyebrows furrowed slightly in confusion. But then a smug smile quickly returned to the lips of that wretched man. He folded the papers and carefully tucked them into his briefcase. "Very good. It's good that you know your place. Tomorrow morning, I will have my lawyer meet us directly at the courthouse to make the process as fast as possible. The money will be in your account tonight. Now, pack your things and leave. Tiffany will be coming over shortly. She doesn't like seeing another woman's belongings in the house." To be this shameless, I had nothing left to say. I stood up, turned my back, and walked up to the second floor, leaving behind the silhouette of a man who was now a stranger. In the bedroom, I pulled out a medium-sized suitcase. I didn't take anything belonging to the luxury that Vincent was offering as charity. The designer handbags, the sparkling jewelry, the expensive silk dresses, I left them all behind. I only packed my own simple clothes, my old laptop, and most importantly, a small, carefully locked wooden box. Inside that box was the notarized agreement, transferring 10% of the company's shares from 7 years ago, bearing Vincent's signature and a red notary seal. This was not a token of love. It was proof of a debt. It was the weapon I had kept for a day exactly like this. Finished packing, I rolled my suitcase down the stairs. Vincent was sitting in the living room, casually sipping wine and talking on the phone with his mistress, his tone affectionate and flirtatious. Seeing me walk down, he merely glanced and continued his conversation. I didn't say goodbye. I opened the front door and walked out into the night. The winter wind in New York howled, biting and cold, but I felt incredibly relieved. The air out here was far fresher than the suffocating, hypocritical atmosphere inside that mansion. I called an Uber and entered the address of a modest apartment complex in Queens, a place I had secretly rented a week ago when I first began suspecting Vincent's betrayal. Sitting in the car, watching the streetlights glide past the window, my heart felt light. Vincent's $150,000 would be in my account tonight. But little did he know. That was only my warm-up. Arrogance had blinded him. He thought he held everything in his hands, believing that an unemployed housewife like me would just meekly accept the money and live out the rest of her life in humiliation. Vincent was great at calculating, but he made a fatal mistake. He completely forgot about the agreement from years ago. Or perhaps he thought it lacked legal value, or assumed I was stupid enough to have thrown it in the trash long ago. His company was in its most sensitive phase, preparing to list on the NASDAQ. Even a minor fluctuation in the major shareholder structure would cause the IPO plan to collapse. All the dedication and mobilized capital would vanish into smoke. Given the current scale of the company, my 10% equity didn't stop at $150,000. According to the recent financial valuations, it was worth at least $30 million. $30 million, a number capable of crushing the pride of any man. The car stopped in front of the modest apartment building. I paid the fare and dragged my suitcase up to the 8th floor unit. The humble room was only the size of Vincent's master bathroom, but it was extremely neat and clean. I threw open the window, letting the wind rush in. From tomorrow onward, I was no longer Chloe, the weak wife who only knew how to stand behind her husband. I was going to take back what belonged to me, every single penny. My parents had shed blood and tears for that man. I would make him pay this debt, principal and interest included. I opened the wooden box and gently stroked the agreement, its pages yellowed by time. The corner of my lips curled up into a cold smile. The real war was only just beginning. Enjoy your night and your smugness, Vincent, I thought. Soon enough, you will be kneeling at my feet, begging for the right to keep your own career. The next morning, the New York sky was a dismal gray. The biting wind cut to the bone. I wore a dark wool coat, draped an old scarf over my shoulders, and casually walked to the family court exactly at 8 a.m. as agreed. Vincent was already there. He had parked his luxury sedan right in front of the gates and was accompanied by a lawyer in a sharp gray suit carrying a polished briefcase. Seeing me step out of a standard rideshare, Vincent smirked triumphantly. He walked over and showed me his phone screen, displaying the successful wire transfer receipt. Exactly $150,000 had landed securely in my account overnight. The procedure at the court was swift because we had submitted all the paperwork in advance. No shared children, no disputes over marital assets, and full agreement on all terms. Any separate property rights, if they existed, would be resolved according to prior agreements and state law. The gray-haired judge looked at us with a sympathetic gaze. He had likely seen too many families broken by money, but it was rare to see a couple so cold and quick to sever ties. When the heavy stamp finalized the decree, our 7-year marriage officially became scrap paper. Stepping out of the courthouse gates, Vincent turned to me with a patronizing look. He advised me to use the settlement money to go back upstate, buy a small plot of land, and open a little grocery store or a diner to live out the rest of my mediocre life in peace. I just looked straight into his eyes, gave a brief nod of acknowledgement, turned on my heel, and walked straight away without uttering a single word. Let the man enjoy his foolish victory for a few more hours. Leaving the court, I immediately took a cab to a quiet, hidden cafe in Greenwich Village. Olivia, my best friend from college, was already waiting there. Olivia was a sharp corporate executive, and the only person who had witnessed my entire journey from a brilliant college student to someone who accepted stepping back to be Vincent's fading shadow. The moment she saw me walk in, Olivia shot up from her chair and slammed her hand on the table, furious. "You actually signed it?" Olivia snapped, her voice full of indignation on my behalf. "Why would you just accept that pathetic $150,000? Vincent is a total scumbag, burning the bridge after he crossed it. 7 years of your youth, the blood and sweat of your parents, who saved him when he was rock bottom. And now he just waves his hand, and it's over? You are too soft, Chloe. If it were me, I would sue him until he was bankrupt." I calmly pulled out a chair, sat down, and ordered a hot chamomile tea. I gently patted Olivia's trembling hand and smiled reassuringly. Olivia, calm down. Do you really think I'm someone who easily lets others trample all over me? That $150,000 is just pocket change he willingly handed over to cover my travel expenses for the next few days. What I'm actually taking from him is hundreds of times larger than that. Saying that, I opened my handbag and carefully pulled out the small wooden box. I unlocked it, pulled out the time-yellowed agreement, and placed it neatly on the table. Olivia frowned, picking up the paper to read. Her eyes widened, shifting from surprise to absolute shock. Then, finally, a loud burst of laughter broke the quiet atmosphere of the cafe. Oh my God! The agreement transferring 10% of the company equity from 7 years ago. Olivia exclaimed in sheer excitement. It has Vincent's wet signature and the notary's official seal. You still kept this treasure, Chloe? I thought you threw it away, or he manipulated you into giving it back ages ago. I took a sip of hot tea, feeling the bitter astringency, followed by a sweet aftertaste in my throat. How could I throw it away? This isn't just scrap paper. This is the sweat, tears, and ancestral land my parents gritted their teeth to sell to save Vincent from the loan sharks. Back then, he was penniless, starting a company with barely any capital. He wrote this as a solemn vow, mortgaging his conscience. I'm sure now, sitting at the pinnacle of his success, he has completely forgotten this paper exists. Or he thinks 10% of a formerly nameless startup has no value today. But he is dead wrong. Olivia gripped the paper, her eyes gleaming with the cunning of a seasoned business veteran. His company, Vanguard Tech Incorporated, is currently filing to list on the Nasdaq. According to financial institutions' valuations last week, the company is worth no less than $300 million. Converting 10% equity right now, plus the surplus value upon IPO, you are holding at least $30 million. $30 million. Chloe, you are officially a multimillionaire. Exactly. I nodded, my gaze becoming fiercely determined. But if I just take this paper to demand my rights, Vincent will use every legal dirty trick and his army of corporate lawyers to stall for time or even try to invalidate the agreement. I don't have time to bicker with him in court. I'm going to strike his fatal weak point right now. His company is in its most sensitive phase right before the IPO. Any major shift in shareholder structure will shatter investor confidence. I continued detailing my plan. Olivia, do you remember Sunrise Capital? They are Vincent's eternal rivals, always hovering to swallow his company whole but never finding a loophole. This morning, I granted full power of attorney to a top-tier Wall Street law firm. They will officially notify Vincent that I am preparing to sell this entire 10% stake to Sunrise Capital. Once Sunrise gets those shares, they will have veto power, the ability to interfere with the board of directors, and they will completely destroy Vincent's IPO plans. Olivia clapped her hands together, her face glowing. This move of yours is a masterclass. You are executing him right at the peak of his glory. Sunrise Capital will roll out the red carpet for these shares. They'd even pay above market price just to strangle their competitor. Vincent is a dead man walking. Let's see if he still has the arrogance to tell you that you don't belong in his world. At that very moment, in a luxurious French restaurant on the top floor of a five-star Manhattan hotel, Vincent was raising a glass of blood-red wine, celebrating with Tiffany. The young female executive, wearing a revealing red silk dress, leaned affectionately against Vincent's shoulder. "Darling, you finally escaped that hillbilly woman," Tiffany purred, her red-painted nails caressing Vincent's suit jacket. $150,000 is such a cheap price to buy your freedom. From now on, we can step out together officially. When the company goes public, you will be the most powerful chairman, and I will be your most glamorous first lady. Vincent laughed heartily, the laugh of a man who believed he manipulated the entire world. Of course, she is stupid and weak. Handed her the money, and she happily signed without daring to utter half a word. From now on, no one can block my path to the top. Cheers to our glorious future. The two crystal glasses clinked together, emitting a crisp, clear sound. But the moment Vincent brought the glass to his lips, his phone resting on the table began to buzz frantically. The screen showed an urgent email from the company's chief legal officer, accompanied by a barrage of text messages from major shareholders. Vincent frowned, set his wine glass down, and picked up the phone. The subject line of the email hid his eyes, causing his face to instantly change color. Urgent. Major shareholder structure change and hostile takeover threat from Sunrise Capital. Vincent's hands began to shake. He frantically opened the attachment, It was a digital scan of the 10% equity transfer agreement bearing his own signature from 7 years ago. Attached to it was an official legal notice from a premier Wall Street law firm, representing their client, Chloe, declaring the intent to finalize the sale of these shares to Sunrise Capital. "What is this? Impossible!" Vincent screamed in panic, his voice cracking with terror. His face turned an ashen, deathly pale, drained of every drop of blood. The phone slipped from his hand, crashing onto the glass table, knocking over the wine glass. The red liquid spilled out, soaking into the pristine white tablecloth like blood. Tiffany jumped in shock, hurriedly grabbing napkins to wipe the stain, panicking. "What's wrong, honey? Is there a crisis at the company?" Vincent grabbed his head, his eyes bloodshot. He gasped for air like a man drowning in deep water. $30 million. She is holding $30 million of the company. If those shares fall into Sunrise's hands, all my work over the last decade will be thrown into the ocean. The IPO will be canceled. Investors will pull their capital, and I will lose control of the company. She's driving me to my death. Vincent sprang up, kicking his chair backward. He frantically dialed my number, but the other end only gave the automated busy signal. I had blocked his number the second I walked out of the cafe with Olivia. The smug pride of the CEO, earning $3 million a year, was entirely shattered, replaced by the sheer, unadulterated panic of a man about to lose his entire empire. The divorce celebration had turned into the most horrific nightmare of his life. For 2 full days after the lawyer sent the notice, I cut off all contact with the outside world. I turned off my personal phone, only using a burner number to communicate with my legal team. I knew perfectly well that outside, Vincent was going insane. My lawyer reported that Vincent had scoured everywhere, from my parents' house upstate to old friends' places. He even showed up and banged furiously on the door of the Queen's apartment I had just rented, but I wasn't there. He mobilized all his connections, sending people to wait outside my law firm's office begging for a negotiation meeting. Sunrise Capital also made moves, publicly confirming their intent to acquire the shares. Rumors began leaking into the financial sector, causing Vanguard Tech's internal stock to fluctuate wildly. Major shareholders constantly called, pressuring Vincent to resolve this mess immediately before they had to submit the final prospectus to the SEC. Vincent was backed into a corner, attacked from all sides. He didn't have $30 million in liquid cash to buy back the shares on such short notice. But if he let Sunrise buy them, he would lose all his power. By the morning of the third day, when I felt Vincent's fire of panic had burned away all his arrogance, I finally texted him an address. It was a serene, traditional Japanese tea house tucked away in a quiet alley in Soho. The interior featured dark agarwood partitions, and the air was filled with the calming scent of lotus tea. However, it was unlikely to soothe the burning anxiety in my ex-husband's heart. At exactly 10 a.m., the door to the private tea room was pushed open forcefully. Vincent walked in. He looked so haggard I almost didn't recognize him. Gone was the slick suit and the perfectly gelled hair. His clothes were disheveled, and his eyes were sunken with dark circles and bloodshot from multiple sleepless nights. As soon as he saw me sitting calmly sipping tea at the low wooden table, Vincent lunged forward like a cornered beast. "Chloe, are you crazy? Do you have any idea what you're doing?" Vincent growled, trying to suppress the rage waiting to explode. "You took confidential company documents to peddle to our rivals. That paper has no legal standing after all these years. You are committing extortion." I slowly poured a cup of lotus tea and pushed it gently toward him. My demeanor was leisurely and unbothered, contrasting sharply with his frantic state. "Sit down. Don't make a racket in a place of peace. If that paper had no legal value, you wouldn't have spent the last 3 days running around like a headless chicken looking for me. My lawyers and the legal team at Sunrise Capital have thoroughly vetted it. It is my separate property, established through a voluntary agreement before we registered our marriage. I have full rights to dispose of it. Who I sell it to is my business." Vincent slumped onto the tatami mat, burying his face in his hands, pulling at his hair. He shifted from threats to begging, playing the eternal card of old sentiments. "Chloe, please. We were husband and wife. After all, we shared 7 years together. This company is my life's work. How can you bear to watch it fall into someone else's hands? Sunrise just wants to destroy the company. Pull back that agreement. I promise I will compensate you properly." I let out a laugh, a cold laugh that echoed through the silent room. "Compensate me properly? Like the way you threw $150,000 at me and mocked me for not being in your social class 3 days ago? You forget too quickly, Vincent. Your life's work was built on the sweat and the ancestral farm of my parents. When you were enjoying your glory with your mistress, did you remember any debt of gratitude? Now that you're in a crisis, you bring up the words husband and wife. Don't you find that laughable? Vincent's face shifted from flushed red to ghostly pale. He bit his lip hard, knowing he couldn't use emotion to sway me anymore. He took a deep breath, trying to scrape together whatever dignity he had left. Then how much do you want? I don't have $30 million in cash right now. I poured all my capital into scaling the company for the IPO. Even if you force me to death, you won't get the cash. I placed my teacup on the table, my eyes sharp as knives piercing into the soul of a traitor. I know you don't have the cash, but you have plenty of other things. I will refrain from selling to Sunrise to give you a way out so you can keep your chairman's seat. In exchange, I want you to transfer your core personal assets to make up the $30 million. Vincent turned pale, trembling as he asked, "What do you want?" I pulled a list drafted by my lawyers from my bag and tossed it onto the table. I have calculated very carefully. First, the Hamptons mansion currently in your name, valued at $8 million. Second, the 5-story commercial office building in Midtown Manhattan, valued at $12 million. Finally, the remaining $10 million must be converted into class of voting shares of the company and transferred to my name immediately. Vincent jolted, his face draining of all color. You're insane. That is literally my entire accumulated core wealth from all these years. I just bought that Hamptons house to prepare for my wedding with Tiffany. That office building is my massive passive income stream. And the class of shares, if I give those to you, you'll have voting rights on the board of directors. Are you trying to strip me of everything? I shrugged, casually retrieving the paper. It's up to you. The decision is yours. If you don't agree, that's fine too. This afternoon, I will officially sign the contract to sell the 10% to Sunrise Capital for an even higher premium. They'll pay me in cash instantly, and the very first thing they will do when they step onto the board is vote to strip you of your position. When that happens, will you still be able to keep those assets? Will your company's stock evaporate? You know the answer. Having said that, I stood up, grabbed my bag, and prepared to walk out the door. There was absolutely zero room for negotiation here. I counted silently in my head. 1, 2, 3. Wait! Vincent's voice rang out, shrill and broken, overflowing with absolute helplessness. I agree. I will sign. Please give me 3 days. My lawyers will prepare all the paperwork. We will sign item by item and expedite the notarizations. I turned back, smiling in satisfaction. Real estate and stocks can be transferred quickly if you pay the premium legal fees. I will give you exactly 3 days. After 3 days, if the deeds are not in my name, the contract with Sunrise will be executed. The next 3 days were a living hell for Vincent. He had to grit his teeth, feeling like his internal organs were being sliced out as he signed each asset transfer document. Tiffany, his little mistress, upon hearing they lost the Hamptons mansion, threw a massive tantrum, crying and threatening to break up, which drove Vincent even crazier. But faced with the risk of losing his entire empire, Vincent had to endure it, accepting the loss of his personal wealth to protect his shell of power at the company. On the afternoon of the third day, at the notary office, Vincent used a trembling hand to sign the final batch of prepared documents. Throughout the process, his face was ashen, his eyes harboring absolute hatred toward me. Yet, he was entirely powerless. He had officially been wiped clean of his personal assets, retaining only his precarious career heading toward an IPO. I carefully tucked the 2 property deeds bearing my name and the certificate of preferred shares into my bag. The feeling of holding $30 million in assets in my hands was strange. There was no extreme euphoria or urge to go on a crazy shopping spree. Instead, there was an incredibly profound calmness and stability. I stepped out of the notary office, looking up at the late afternoon New York sky, glowing brilliantly pink. For 7 years, I had lost myself to build the career of an ungrateful man. Now, with this massive fortune, I wouldn't choose to live a life of idle luxury. I would use it as a springboard to build an empire of my own. The sweetest revenge is not destroying others, but standing at a dazzling peak, forcing your enemies to look up at you in regret and envy. The game was only just beginning. My name is Chloe, and I just became a multi-millionaire, holding a massive fortune. I didn't choose the path of leisurely enjoyment, as many might assume. The days confined to the kitchen, trapped within the four walls of Vincent's mansion, had taught me a priceless lesson about independence. A woman, regardless of her age or circumstances, must have her own career to stand firmly on her own 2 feet. 3 months later, when all the legal procedures and core staffing were settled, I decided to use the 5-story commercial building in Midtown Manhattan, the asset I took from Vincent, as the headquarters for my new startup. My business idea wasn't born out of impulse. During my 7 years stepping back as a supportive wife, I had quietly observed, listened, and understood the deep struggles of women in the corporate world. They face immense pressure, from proving their professional competence and fighting for promotions, to battling invisible biases and struggling to balance work and family. I wanted to create a safe space, a dedicated social networking platform just for them. A place devoid of malicious judgment and the toxicity of standard social media. A place where women could share work experiences, confide in their hidden struggles, seek career advancement, and support each other to rise. I gave my platform a single, simple name: Haven. It symbolized a safe harbor for the soul and peace of mind in one's career. On my first morning arriving to clean and set up the new office, I unexpectedly ran into an uninvited guest. Tiffany, my ex-husband's little mistress, stepped out of an expensive sports car and walked straight into the lobby of my building. She wore a tight, designer dress, oversized sunglasses, and her high heels clacked against the marble floor with overwhelming arrogance. Seeing me directing the contractors on how to arrange the furniture, Tiffany stopped, took off her sunglasses, and gave a condescending smirk. "Hello, Chloe. I didn't expect you to have the ambition to start a company," Tiffany said haughtily, crossing her arms. "Vincent told me you're planning to make some sort of social app for women. Do you think building tech is as easy as cooking a pot of stew at home?" I calmly turned around, brushing a thin layer of dust off my sleeve, and looked straight into the face of the smug young woman. "Hello, Tiffany. What I do, whether it's easy or hard, doesn't seem to concern you. This place is an active construction site and quite dusty. What are you doing here?" Tiffany stepped closer, pulling a check from her expensive handbag and waving it in front of my face. "I came here to do you a favor. Vincent is extremely busy with the IPO roadshow. He doesn't want to see his ex-wife making a fool of herself and affecting his reputation. I represent a private angel investor who wants to buy your entire concept and this shell of a company for $500,000. Take this money and shut this office down. You should know your place. $500,000 is a steal for the delusional ideas of a housewife." I burst out laughing. My laughter echoed through the cluttered space, causing the construction workers to turn and look. I didn't take the check. I simply replied flatly, "$500,000? You intend to use $500,000 to buy my life's vision? Or are you just here to throw your weight around? Go back and tell Vincent, I am not desperate enough to accept charity from you people. The building you are currently standing in, and the Hamptons mansion you plan to live in, are both legally in my name. So please, leave. Stop polluting the workspace of my company." Tiffany's face changed drastically, flushing red with anger. She stomped her foot in frustration and shoved the check back into her bag. "You just wait. Let's see how long you survive in this brutal market. You will soon regret your stubbornness today." With that, Tiffany spun around, hurried back to her car, and sped off. Tiffany's insolence didn't bother me. In fact, it fanned the flames of my determination. I knew that for Haven to truly grow, I couldn't just rely on my own pockets. I needed partners with vision and battlefield experience. Through Olivia's connections, I secured a crucial meeting with Barbara. Barbara was a veteran angel investor, a woman known as a shark in the tech industry, famous for her strict standards and incredibly sharp eye for talent. The meeting took place at a discreet private club in Gramercy Park. Barbara was around 60, with neatly cropped silver hair, sharp eyes, and an exceptionally calm demeanor. I presented my business plan for Haven clearly, without flashy embellishments. I spoke about the pain points of corporate women, the market void that current social networks couldn't fill, and most importantly, the core solution Haven offered. Our algorithm would prioritize connecting users with similar professions and interests, creating specialized support groups, while providing absolute identity protection for intimate confessions. Barbara listened quietly, occasionally nodding, her fingers gently tapping the wooden table. When I finished my pitch, she took a sip of hot tea, her eyes evaluating me critically. "Chloe, your idea is highly humanitarian and hits the exact psychology of a very lucrative demographic. But the business world speaks in numbers, not in tears or empty empathy. You have a massive fortune from your divorce settlement. Why don't you self-fund this? Why come to me to raise capital? I smiled confidently, meeting her sharp gaze. Barbara, my money could keep this company running for 10 years without starving. But I don't need a company that just survives. I need Haven to explode and become the #1 ecosystem for women. I didn't come to you because I lack money. I need your network, your strategic vision, and your operational experience. Your presence on the cap table is the ultimate guarantee of trust for both users and the market. Barbara broke into an approving smile, the wrinkles around her eyes showing her satisfaction. Great delivery. You survived a massive crisis without collapsing, and you know how to leverage outside power to scale. I like your decisiveness. I will inject $1.5 million for your seed round. In exchange, I want 15% equity and a strategic advisory seat on the board. We shook hands, officially forming an unbreakable alliance. With Barbara's backing, Haven quickly gained attention in the tech world. In the following days, I personally recruited top talent. I convinced Harrison, a brilliant systems architect who had worked in Silicon Valley, and Victoria, an expert in behavioral psychology and an outstanding marketing director. They were young, passionate professionals won over by my humane vision and sincerity. Together with Harrison and Victoria, Haven's team of engineers and staff was rapidly assembled. The 5-story building in Midtown was now brightly lit every night, buzzing with discussions. Haven was no longer just an idea on paper. It was taking shape day by day, readying for an explosive launch that would mark the powerful rebirth of my life. The day the Haven app officially launched on the app stores, I stood with all the employees, anxiously watching the metrics on the big screen. There were no massive ad campaigns, no A-list celebrity endorsements. We chose a slow burn, organic approach. In the initial phase, Haven attracted users through articles, sharing real workplace experiences and inspiring stories from ordinary women. Thanks to Harrison's smart algorithms, users quickly found communities tailored to them. After just the first week, downloads surpassed 100,000. Daily active user retention was incredibly high. Victoria, my marketing director, joyfully reported that word of mouth was spreading like wildfire. However, the joy was short-lived. Right when Haven began to make waves, I received a direct declaration of war. It was a late Friday afternoon when Vincent suddenly appeared at my office. He had regained his polished, authoritative aura after successfully submitting his SEC filings for the IPO. Without waiting for the receptionist, Vincent pushed the door open and strode into my office, wearing a mocking half-smile. "Congratulations on launching your new startup," Vincent said, giving a few slow, sarcastic claps as he pulled out a chair and sat opposite me. "I heard your little Haven app is attracting a few thousand stay-at-home moms. Not bad. But how long do you think this children's toy can survive in the real market?" I stopped typing and looked at him calmly. "Did you go out of your way to come here just to throw a few insults? If you don't have anything important to say, please leave. I have a lot of work to do." Vincent leaned forward, clasping his hands on the desk, his eyes gleaming with jealousy and arrogance. "I came to deliver some good news. My company is officially launching a similar social networking app called Queenbee next week. I've poured $5 million into a nationwide marketing and ad blitz. I'm going to show you what the power of real money and core tech looks like. Your tiny company will be crushed in a month. You took my assets, so I'm going to use my expertise to bury your career. You've already lost, Chloe." I smiled calmly, completely unfazed by the threats of a bitter man. "Is that so? The business world thrives on fair competition. If you think $5 million can buy the loyalty and truly understand the hearts of women, then by all means, try. I always welcome fair competitors. I just fear your app will be nothing but a flashy shell, empty on the inside." Vincent scoffed, standing up abruptly. "We'll see. I will wipe out your user base. No one wants to use a boring app when there's a platform next door, offering cash rewards and giveaways." With that, he turned and walked out, leaving silence in my office. True to his word, the following week, Vincent's Queenbee app launched with a carpet-bombing ad campaign. He hired armies of influencers to praise it online. Billboards popped up at major intersections in New York and San Francisco. Most aggressively, Vincent used cash to lure users. Create an account, get a cash bonus. Invite friends, get more rewards. This strategy of crushing the competition with money worked immediately on the surface. Queenbee downloads skyrocketed into the millions within days. Tech blogs began reporting on Queenbee's rise, while questioning Haven's ability to survive against such a giant. The atmosphere in my office grew tense. Some of the younger staff were visibly anxious looking at the competitors' meteoric growth charts. During the Monday morning briefing, I stood before my team, my voice clear and unwavering. Do not panic, I emphasized. Money can buy app downloads, but it cannot buy genuine connection. They are pouring money to attract users through greed. When the promo cash runs out, those users will leave. Our core is human value, sincerity, and understanding our customers' pain points. Keep focusing on perfecting security features, optimizing user experience, and encouraging real stories. We will use content to retain them. My reassurance, combined with Victoria's sharp data analysis and Harrison's solid technical defense, rallied the company's morale. We patiently stuck to our original strategy, and reality proved my calculations perfectly correct. After the promotional boom, Queenbee began exposing its fatal flaws. Their platform was flooded with spam ads, clickbait articles, and worst of all, fake accounts running scams. Female users, who inherently needed a safe space to share, felt harassed and outraged. They began deleting Queenbee en masse. Meanwhile, on Haven, a campaign initiated by Victoria called Corporate Shadows suddenly created an earthquake. Thousands of authentic, emotional stories about single mothers fighting for promotions, female employees overcoming workplace harassment, and tears shed in office bathrooms were widely shared. This fierce empathy bonded millions of women together. They didn't need cash rewards. They needed a place to be heard and respected. Thanks to those authentic, inspiring stories, Haven didn't spend a single cent on ads yet climbed to the top of the trending charts across all app stores and social media platforms. Organic traffic multiplied exponentially. Our servers ran at max capacity to meet the massive user influx. We had officially won the first battle for survival. Vincent's arrogant declaration of war was crushed by his own vanity and emptiness. My career was taking solid steps toward new heights, proving to everyone the true strength of an independent woman. The joy of victory over Queenbee didn't last long before another storm hit. Late one night at the end of the month, as I was deep in a hard-earned sleep, my phone rang frantically, shattering the silence. It was Harrison. The usually calm young engineer sounded rushed and intensely stressed. Harrison reported a disaster. Haven's entire server system was under a massive, coordinated cyber attack. Hackers were trying to breach the firewall to infiltrate the core database, where millions of pieces of personal information and intimate user confessions were stored. I shot out of bed, grabbed a coat, and rushed out. The biting winter wind whipped my face, but it did nothing to cool the fiery anxiety in my chest. When I burst into the office, the scene was pure chaos. The engineering team was staring intensely at monitors flashing streams of red code. The clacking of keyboards sounded like a torrential downpour. Sweat beaded on Harrison's forehead, despite the AC being on blast. "What's the status, Harrison? Did they get the user data?" I asked rapidly, standing right behind my lead engineer. Harrison didn't take his eyes off the screen, his hands moving continuously. He quickly reported that the outer defense layer had been breached, but he had managed to trigger the central server freeze protocol just in time. Currently, Haven was suffering a widespread blackout and had been offline for a few hours. No one could access it. However, the best news was that user data remained completely intact. Before the hackers could steal a single piece of personal information, the system automatically severed all connections. I breathed a sigh of relief, feeling like a massive boulder had been lifted off my chest. Our most valuable asset wasn't money. It was the trust of millions of women who had confided their deepest secrets to this platform. If their information was leaked, the consequences would be catastrophic. All our hard work would turn to ash. The next morning, the Haven server outage became hot gossip across tech news and social media. Competitors, especially those behind Queenbee, seized the opportunity to spread malicious rumors. They hired trolls to spread fake news that Haven had been completely breached, that users were facing extortion, and that sensitive data had been leaked. The atmosphere in the office was suffocating. Victoria walked into my office with red eyes and a stack of reports showing negative comments spreading like wildfire. "Chloe, what do we do? Users are panicking. So many people are commenting, demanding to delete their accounts, Victoria said anxiously, wringing her hands. I invited Victoria to sit down and personally poured her a glass of warm water. In times of crisis, a leader is not allowed to panic. 7 years of enduring a suffocating marriage had forged within me an iron will and extraordinary composure. I looked at Victoria and spoke clearly and methodically. Don't panic. A crisis is the best test of a company's mettle. We won't hide anything. We won't make excuses. The truth is always the sharpest weapon. Right now, draft an open letter to all our users. State clearly that our servers were attacked, but assert strongly that zero personal data was compromised. We proactively shut down the system to protect them. The company will publicly apologize for the downtime and grant every user a free 1-year premium subscription as a sincere apology. Victoria nodded, regaining her confidence. But Chloe, the malicious rumors are still spreading. If we only explain ourselves, I'm afraid it won't be enough to quell the public backlash. I gave a sharp, cold smile, walking over to the window to look down at the bustling Manhattan traffic. We aren't just going to play defense. It's time to go on the offensive. Add an important announcement to the end of the letter. Haven officially offers a $150,000 cash bounty to any individual or organization, providing verified evidence to identify the mastermind behind this cyber attack. We will cooperate fully with the FBI to drag the culprit into the light. As soon as the open letter and the $150,000 bounty were published, public opinion instantly reversed. Our transparency and fierce stance won back the users' trust. They appreciated the honesty and responsibility of Haven's leadership. The PR crisis was temporarily contained, but I knew that for the app to come back online and withstand larger attacks in the future, we needed a far more advanced security infrastructure. That meant we needed massive capital. I picked up the phone and called Barbara, our angel investor. I explained the entire situation clearly, hiding nothing. I proposed she inject another $3 million to comprehensively upgrade our cybersecurity infrastructure. Barbara listened in silence. After a moment of thought, her warm voice came through the phone. Chloe, I did not misjudge you. Your crisis management is decisive and visionary. I approve the $3 million disbursement this afternoon. Use that money to build an impenetrable fortress. Nobody gets to bully women with a backbone. Fueled by the new capital, Harrison's engineering team worked day and night. 3 days later, Haven was back online, smoother and more secure than ever. User traffic didn't just recover, it skyrocketed. They returned to support a platform that dared to stand up and protect its customers. Meanwhile, my $150,000 bait worked miracles. The power of money, combined with the sharp investigative skills of the FBI's cybercrimes unit, quickly tracked down the hacker group. During interrogation, these criminals confessed everything. The mastermind who hired them to sabotage us was none other than Vincent. He had routed the payment through shell companies to hide his identity, but digital transaction trails cannot be entirely erased. The authorities immediately issued a subpoena for Vincent, but my ambition to topple him didn't stop at cyber-sabotage charges. Over the past few weeks, Olivia and I had quietly reached out to Vanguard Tech's former CFO, who had been wrongfully fired by Vincent. Combined with data loopholes Harrison discovered while analyzing Queen Bee's source code, we pieced together a complete picture of the rot inside Vincent's company. The horrific truth was exposed. Not only did Vincent blatantly steal Haven's core algorithm, but he had also created an elaborate double bookkeeping system. He inflated phantom revenue and forged transactions to doctor the financial reports, aiming to deceive the SEC and defraud investors right before the IPO. These were felonies that could send him to federal prison and completely collapse the multi-hundred-million-dollar empire he was trying to build. Holding a thick file full of evidence of his crimes, I knew the fated moment to end this 7-year grudge had truly arrived. Winter this year was colder than usual in New York. The trees lining the streets were stripped of their leaves, their bare, bony branches reaching up against the gray sky. A classic, discreet private club in Brooklyn Heights was the location I chose for a decisive meeting. My guest today was Arthur, the oldest major shareholder and the most respected voice on the board of directors at Vanguard Tech, where Vincent was CEO. Arthur was a veteran investor who had seeded Vincent's startup from its earliest days back when I was still a devoted wife running around trying to save my husband. At exactly 10 a.m., Arthur arrived. He walked slowly with an elegant wooden cane, his face etched with the wrinkles of time and corporate battles. I respectfully stood up, pulled out his chair, and poured him a steaming cup of premium aged oolong tea. "Hello, Arthur. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to meet me today, I began, my tone sincere and polite. Arthur took a sip of tea, his cloudy but sharp eyes scanning my face. You are Chloe, Vincent's ex-wife. I heard the two of you went your separate ways. As a matter of principle, I don't interfere in family matters. But since you went out of your way to invite me here, I assume this isn't to reminisce. If you have something important to discuss, speak plainly. I nodded, cutting straight to the point. Arthur, I know you view Vanguard Tech as your brainchild. You've placed high hopes on the upcoming NASDAQ listing. But I came today to bring you bad news. That brainchild is being treated as a joke by the very man running it. I pulled the thick file of evidence from my briefcase and placed it gently on the wooden table. Please look at these documents. This is comprehensive proof showing Vincent has been keeping double books and falsifying revenue to defraud the shareholders and the SEC. Furthermore, he used company funds to hire hackers to attack my social network. The FBI has gathered enough evidence and is preparing to indict him. Arthur's hands shook as he took the file. The more he flipped through the forged internal financial reports, the grayer his face became. His veiny hands gripped the edge of the table, his breathing growing heavy and erratic. He was an honest businessman who strictly adhered to the law. Vincent's financial fraud didn't just smear Arthur's honor. It threatened to turn his entire retirement investment into scrap paper if the feds launched a public investigation. That arrogant fool. Arthur slammed his hand on the table, his voice raspy with rage. He dared to bypass all of us to commit such egregious crimes. If the IPO is canceled, the company will default, and the stock will be worthless. Why are you showing me this? Do you want to destroy the company? I do not want to destroy the company, I replied firmly. On the contrary, I want to save it. Vincent currently holds 30% of the shares. I have quietly negotiated and purchased 25% from various minor shareholders. Currently, you hold 20%. Plus my own 10% class of voting shares I secured from him in the divorce. That gives me 35%. If you and the remaining board members agree to side with me and consolidate our voting power, I will step into the boardroom as the majority shareholder. We will oust Vincent before the federal indictment goes public. Only by cleaning house, changing leadership, and making the books transparent can we save market confidence and protect everyone's assets. Arthur sat in deep thought for a long time, his eyes glued to the fake numbers on the paper. Finally, he let out a heavy sigh and nodded in agreement. A needle in a haystack will eventually show itself. He who sows the wind reaps the whirlwind. I will call an emergency board meeting tomorrow morning. I am entrusting the life of this company to you. The next morning, in the top-floor conference room of the Vanguard Tech Tower, the atmosphere was incredibly solemn. Vincent sat pompously at the head of the table. Wearing a luxurious black suit, his face flushed with excitement, he talked endlessly about the company's glorious future once it hit the stock market. He had absolutely no idea that his worst nightmare was walking down the hallway. The heavy oak doors were pushed open forcefully. The harsh sound cut off the CEO's smug speech. I walked into the room wearing an elegant, charcoal gray tailored suit, projecting authority and grace. The eyes of the dozen board members all turned toward me, filled with astonishment and confusion. Vincent froze, his eyes wide. He shot up from his chair, pointing at the door, his voice hissing with rage. What the hell are you doing here? Who let you into this executive boardroom? Security. Call security up here and drag her out. I calmly walked toward the single empty chair opposite the head of the table and placed my leather briefcase down. You don't need to yell for security. I am here completely legally. I am present at this meeting as the largest shareholder of Vanguard Tech Incorporated, representing 55% of the voting shares. Author's note. Her 10% Class A+, 25% minor plus Arthur's 20% equals 55% voting block. The boardroom immediately erupted into chaos. Whispers and skeptical glances filled the room. Vincent let out a long, mocking laugh, a twisted smile of a man trying to mask his panic. You're insane. Where would you get 55%? Stop making a scene. I didn't bother arguing. I signaled the lawyer accompanying me to distribute certified copies of the share ownership to every member at the table. Simultaneously, I pulled out the file containing the evidence of Vincent's monumental crimes and placed it squarely in front of Arthur. Members of the board, I announced, my voice echoing clearly across the vast room. The man sitting at the head of the table has been lying to all of you. Not only did he blatantly steal core technology from another enterprise, But he also maintained double books to forge hundreds of millions of dollars in fake revenue. Even worse, federal authorities have sufficient evidence to indict him as the mastermind behind a cyber attack to destroy a competitor's property. If you allow him to continue as CEO, this company will be buried in federal prison sentences, and all of you will lose your entire investments. Vincent's face shifted from furious red to paper white. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He frantically grabbed the financial reports, his hands trembling violently. He stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence, his eyes darting madly for help from the people around him. But all he received were cold, furious glares. Enough! Arthur slammed his hand on the table and stood up. The commanding voice of the senior board member shocked the room into dead silence. The truth is laid bare right here. What more do you want to deny? You betrayed the trust of all of us. You do not deserve to sit in that chair for another second. Arthur turned to the entire board. As a founding member, I motion for an immediate vote to dismiss Vincent as Chief Executive Officer, stripping him of all executive powers, pending an internal investigation, and to cooperate fully with federal authorities. All in favor, raise your hand. I was the first to raise my hand. Immediately after, Arthur slowly raised his veiny arm high. Then, one by one, every person in the boardroom, people who once flattered and praised Vincent, resolutely raised their hands to cast him out. The vote was unanimous. The gavel had fallen. The sentence was passed. Vincent collapsed into his plush leather chair, his eyes hollow and lifeless. He looked at me, the woman he had looked down upon for 7 years, as an uncultured country girl, now standing in the position of an absolute victor. There was no screaming, no arguing. Everything happened too fast, too ruthlessly for his pride to handle. His multi-hundred-million-dollar empire, his powerful chairman status, the societal praise, all of it had completely collapsed. In just one morning, he officially lost power over the very company he had founded. As for me, I had collected the debt of my lost youth in the most fair, unapologetic, and triumphant way possible. The counterattack had reached its perfect, satisfying conclusion. Closing the boardroom door, I stepped out into the sunlit hallway, took a deep breath, and tasted the sweet flavor of freedom and victory. After that earth-shattering board meeting, the storm seemed to recede, making way for an incredibly peaceful atmosphere. Under my leadership, the Haven app grew explosively, becoming an indispensable social platform for millions of American women. The heavy workload swept me away from dawn till dusk, but deep down, I maintained a steady calm. I knew how to balance my life, never allowing myself to be blindly consumed by the pursuit of fame like Vincent was. One weekend afternoon, while reviewing quarterly financials, I received a phone call from a relative upstate. They informed me that Vincent's parents had been rushed to an emergency room in a New York hospital. The shock of their son being ousted as CEO, facing federal prison, and losing all his wealth had broken the old couple. Vincent's father suffered a severe heart attack, and his mother was suffering from severe physical exhaustion, requiring continuous IV fluids. Hearing the news, I sat in silence for a moment. After 7 years as their daughter-in-law, I knew their personalities well. Though sometimes strict in traditional ways, they were ultimately kind, hardworking people who only wanted to see their son settle down peacefully. The monumental sins were committed by Vincent alone. His aging parents had no idea about his dirty tactics in the business world. As the saying goes, debts must be collected from the debtor. Vincent's career had collapsed. The price he paid was more than enough for his betrayal. I had no reason to direct my hatred toward 2 dying elders in a hospital bed. Thinking this, I set aside my work and personally prepared a premium gift basket of rare health supplements, organic tonics, and an envelope of cash to cover their medical bills. The hospital corridor in the late afternoon was quiet, smelling faintly of antiseptic. I gently pushed open the door to the intensive care unit. Vincent's mother was sitting, feeding thin broth to her husband on the bed. Her face was gaunt and wrinkled, her eyes swollen from crying over her son. Hearing the noise, she looked up. When she recognized me, her hands trembled so violently that the metal spoon clattered onto the stainless steel tray. She looked flustered, burying her face, not daring to look me in the eye. The guilt and shame she felt on behalf of her traitorous son made her feel inadequate. "Please, stay seated. How is his condition?" I spoke first, my voice calm and warm, completely devoid of resentment. I walked over and placed the gift basket on the bedside table. Vincent's father opened his cloudy eyes, his lips moving as if to speak, but his breath was too weak. His mother burst into tears, covering her face with her wrinkled hands. She sobbed, her voice choking. "Oh, Chloe, we have sinned against you. This family sinned against you, and your parents upstate. Vincent was too cruel. He did unforgivable things, deceiving a good wife and breaking all moral codes. Now that things have come to this, it's instant karma. We don't have the face to look at you anymore." I pulled up a plastic chair, sat next to the bed, and gently held my former mother-in-law's cold hands. The resentment in my heart had entirely melted away, leaving only deep compassion. "Please don't say that. The issues between Vincent and me have been resolved legally. Everyone is responsible for their own actions. He is an adult and must face the consequences. But I have never forgotten the gratitude of family. For 7 years I called you mom and dad. That bond doesn't just snap instantly. Right now, you must not overthink. Focus on resting and recovering. I've already spoken with the chief of medicine regarding your hospital bills and the best treatments. Please rest easy." Hearing my sincere words from the bottom of my heart, the elderly couple could only weep. They cried out of regret and out of being deeply moved by a kindness and forgiveness they never expected. My visit wasn't just a humanitarian act. It was proof of my own growth and true letting go. Keeping the fire of hatred alive only burns one's own soul. When you can forgive those who don't deserve it, you elevate your own character above theirs. Leaving the hospital, my heart felt as light as a white cloud drifting across an autumn sky. I returned to running my company with full dedication. A few months later, I received an invitation to attend the National Women's Entrepreneurship Summit, an incredibly prestigious event gathering the nation's top leaders, brilliant entrepreneurs, and largest investment funds. The organizing committee selected Haven as the prime case study for innovation and bestowed upon me the honor of giving the keynote address. That day, I chose to wear an elegant, tailored emerald green silk gown, paired simply with a string of classic pearls. No flashy designer logos, no heavy makeup. I stepped onto the stage with the confidence of a woman who had weathered the storm. My speech didn't focus on dry financial metrics, nor did I teach people how to get rich quick. I spoke about the journey of finding my true self. I talked about women struggling on the boundary between family and career, about the importance of financial independence, and how Haven was born to heal those wounds. The massive auditorium, holding 3,000 people, sat in absolute silence, hanging on to every word. When I concluded my speech with the phrase, "Build your own crown using kindness and intellect," the entire hall stood up. The thunderous applause echoed endlessly. Many shed tears, finding profound resonance in my words. Right after the ceremony, at the VIP networking reception, I had the immense honor of meeting Eleanor. Eleanor was a living legend in American business, a powerful woman who had steered a top-tier real estate and finance conglomerate through multiple global economic crises. Though in her 70s, she exuded a majestic, sharp, and incredibly warm aura. "Chloe, your speech today truly touched the heart," Eleanor said, walking up to me and raising her glass of sparkling cider with a smile. "I have followed the rise of Haven from the early days. How you handled the PR crisis, how you crushed dirty, competitive tactics. It all showed a caliber rarely seen at your age. I am incredibly grateful for your praise," I replied, bowing my head respectfully. "Meeting you in person here is the greatest honor of this event for me. I've always considered you a shining role model to learn from on this thorny path of business." Eleanor nodded slightly, her eyes full of admiration. "Our country needs more women who dare to dream and execute like you. Women here are brilliant and resilient, but they lack safe financial launchpads to turn their dreams into reality. I've been nurturing a massive project, and I think you are the perfect missing piece." Eleanor slowly laid out her idea to establish a mega fund called the Elite Women's Empowerment Fund. The initial capital was projected to be in the hundreds of millions, mobilized from major corporations. The fund would exclusively scout, invest in, and provide strategic training for female-led startups. Eleanor wanted to invite me to join as co-founder and vice chairwoman of the board. My understanding of the market, combined with her massive financial leverage, would create a historic push. Her proposal surprised me immensely, but also filled me with excitement. It was an incredible opportunity to scale my impact and help tens of thousands of other women across the country. Without hesitation, I agreed to partner with her. Our joint signatures that day opened a glorious new chapter in my career. In the days that followed, my name dominated the press. I continuously appeared on the covers of the most prestigious business and economic magazines. From a submissive housewife, discarded by her husband, I had shot up to become a symbol of success, a model of an independent, strong, and deeply compassionate woman. The articles didn't dig into my messy divorce. They celebrated the real value I brought to society. Looking back at the road traveled, I realized every bitter and sweet moment was a priceless lesson. That cruel divorce petition had severed my chains, freeing the phoenix inside me to spread its wings and fly into a bright, glorious sky. Life always operates on a deeply fair and precise law of cause and effect. While my career shined as brilliantly as the midday sun, Vincent's empire withered rapidly like a dying candle in a storm. After being ousted as CEO, Vincent faced a barrage of federal investigations for financial fraud and cyber-sabotage. The shareholders who once flattered him now turned their backs, filing endless lawsuits demanding damages. To avoid a lengthy prison sentence, Vincent was forced to liquidate whatever tiny fraction of shares he had left at rock-bottom prices to pay restitutions to investors and massive federal fines. He had to surrender the luxury apartment he was renting. All his cars and valuables were sold off. He officially returned to the starting line penniless. Worst of all was Tiffany's betrayal. The young mistress, who had sworn to stand with him at the peak of glory, quietly gathered the expensive jewelry he had gifted her and left without a word the moment the feds announced the indictment. She ran off with a real estate mogul, leaving Vincent stranded in the rubble created by his own greed. Spring that year brought unseasonably warm weather to New York. Cherry blossoms were blooming across the city streets. Amidst the bustling atmosphere of millions of people welcoming the new season, I was sitting in my private office at Haven HQ, leisurely signing off on the Q1 media plans. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city donning its new colors. Suddenly, the phone on my desk buzzed. The screen displayed a completely unfamiliar number. I pressed answer, maintaining my usual calm voice. "Hello, this is Chloe speaking." The other end was silent for a few seconds. There was only the sound of a heavy sigh, mixed with the hurried, noisy background of an airport terminal. Then, a familiar male voice spoke up, raspy and exhausted. "Chloe, it's Vincent. Please don't hang up. Just give me a few minutes." The hand holding my pen paused. It had been a long time since I heard this voice. There was no arrogance, no condescension, and none of the frantic panic from our last encounters. His voice was empty, sorrowful, and held the sound of absolute defeat. I slowly put the pen down, leaned back in my plush chair, and replied flatly, "What do you want? All legal matters between us are settled. I don't think we have any reason to be in contact." Vincent cleared his throat, trying to suppress his emotions. "I know I have no right to call you right now. Tomorrow, I am boarding a flight. An uncle of mine in rural Alaska has vouched for me to go up there and help manage his struggling diner. I've decided to leave New York, leave everything behind, and start my life over with my bare hands. I only called to give you my most sincere apology." I listened in silence. Outside, the spring sun cast golden rays through the window blinds. "Chloe, I was truly wrong," Vincent continued, his voice choking up. "Arrogance and vanity blinded me. I forgot who stood by me and shared my suffering during my darkest times. I treated you terribly, and I betrayed your family's trust. Over these past months, after losing everything, being abandoned by my friends, and dumped by my mistress, I finally understand the pain I caused you. But there is one truth I need to tell you, so your heart can find some peace, about me and Tiffany. I swear to God, I never crossed the physical line with her." Hearing this, I raised an eyebrow, slightly surprised but maintaining my composure. "It was all blind, empty ego," Vincent confessed, pouring his heart out. "I thought a successful CEO needed a trendy, highly social woman by his side as an ornament to his prestige. I entertained the illusion of a fake high society life. I flirted with her, spoiled her with money to satisfy the selfish ego of a shallow man. But deep down, I never wanted to throw away my family. When I filed for divorce, I simply thought I could use money to solve the inconvenience. I never expected I was digging the grave for my own career. It's too late now. But I just want you to know that the decent part of me never truly corrupted the sanctity of our 7-year marriage." Vincent's confessions flowed steadily through the phone. Suddenly, I felt a strange sense of peace rise in my chest. The final knot of the past was untied. I had thought he was utterly despicable, but it turned out he was just a weak human who easily succumbed to the superficial temptations of wealth and fame. He had paid an incredibly high price, losing his brilliant empire and forced into exile in a frozen wasteland. That punishment was more than enough. I took a deep breath, my voice gentle and articulate. I acknowledge what you just said. It's all in the past, Vincent. Hatred and resentment hold no meaning for me anymore. Everyone must walk the path they have chosen, whether it's a red carpet or covered in thorns. I paused for a moment to let the words sink in for both of us. It will be very difficult and challenging where you are going. Leave the shadow of the multi-million-dollar CEO behind in this city. Work hard. Honor your aging parents. They suffered too much humiliation because of you. I wish you resilience on your journey, that you find peace in your soul, and live a decent life. Goodbye. Vincent. Thank you, Chloe. Thank you for everything, Vincent said. His voice was much lighter, as if he had just shed a massive boulder that had been crushing his chest. Goodbye. I wish you eternal happiness and success. Beep. 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 I slowly put the phone down on the desk. The call lasted less than 10 minutes, but it completely closed the darkest chapter of my life. The ghost of a failed marriage, the bitterness of betrayal, the feeling of absolute resentment, it all officially vanished like morning mist. 7 years of youth closed with a cruel divorce petition and ended with a call of permanent farewell. I stood up, walked to the window, and opened the glass wide to let the crisp, pure spring breeze flood the room. Down on the street, the bustling crowd moved back and forth, carrying hopes for a prosperous new year. Looking at the vast city before me, I smiled radiantly. I was completely free. No more restraints, no more torment. My mind was incredibly clear and strong. A new journey awaited me ahead, a journey of contribution, of prosperity, and who knows, perhaps true love blossoming on the path I was about to walk. Time passed in the blink of an eye, carrying the storms deep into the past. Since the day the family drama concluded and old grudges were entirely shed, my life officially turned to a completely new page, more brilliant, expansive, and stable than ever before. Under my leadership, Haven expanded far beyond a simple social app, becoming a comprehensive and indispensable ecosystem for millions of American women. Leveraging our massive capital and strategic vision, we rolled out highly practical features: advanced soft skills training, free legal consulting, and high-quality job networking. Earlier this year, at a nationwide gala hosted by the Department of Commerce in Washington, D.C., Haven was honored as one of the top 10 most innovative companies in the nation. As the triumphant music played, I, wearing an elegant silk gown, held my head high and stepped onto the stage to accept the solid crystal trophy. Holding the prestigious award, I looked out at the thousands of admiring eyes in the brilliantly lit hall. The applause thundered like a grand symphony, rewarding the tireless efforts of an entire team. Standing in a position many only dreamed of, I silently gave thanks to the ups and downs and the bitterness of the past. It was the extreme pain of betrayal and poverty that had forged an iron will, transforming a submissive housewife into a dazzling jewel in the corporate world today. Alongside Haven's resounding success, the Elite Women's Empowerment Fund, co-founded by the legendary Eleanor, and myself achieved remarkable milestones. Within over a year of operating at full capacity, the fund evaluated and successfully disbursed capital to over 50 startups from the East Coast to the West Coast. These projects were incredibly diverse but shared one common pillar. They were steered by the hands and minds of women. They ranged from organic agricultural facilities, providing stable income for rural communities in the Midwest, to traditional textile cooperatives preserving local heritage, to pioneering ed-tech companies in major cities. Watching women who had once suffered disadvantages and lived under the shadow of societal prejudice confidently stand up to master their own lives, my joy multiplied 1,000-fold. Eleanor often taught me that a great leader isn't someone who hoards all material wealth for themselves, but someone who uses their talent and dedication to pave wide, open roads for tens of thousands of others to walk. That profound, deeply humane philosophy became the compass guiding all my investment and business decisions. On a late autumn day, I took a long business trip to San Francisco to attend a global investment summit and seek strategic partners for the Elite Fund. The Bay Area welcomed me with brilliant golden sunshine, a fast-paced lifestyle, and an atmosphere brimming with innovative energy. That evening, a high-profile investor appreciation gala was held at a magnificent 5-star hotel overlooking the San Francisco Bay. I chose a midnight blue velvet gown, exquisitely tailored. The outfit was conservative and elegant, yet exuded luxury and authority. Wearing a premium natural pearl necklace and my hair swept up elegantly, I strode into the grand hall with the confident, calm demeanor of a woman who completely commanded her financial destiny. Eleanor had arrived early. Seeing me enter the grand hall, she smiled warmly and waved me over to the central VIP table. Standing next to her was a man around 40, tall, broad-shouldered, and incredibly grounded. He wore a meticulously tailored charcoal suit paired with a subtle, deep blue silk tie. His face featured a strong, square jaw, a high forehead exuding sharp intellect, and most notably, bright eyes that held a strange, comforting calmness and understanding. "Chloe, you made it," Eleanor said, her voice cheerful and warm. "Come here. Let me introduce you to a dear friend. This is Thomas, the CEO of Apex Venture Partners." Thomas is a brilliant financial expert who has helped many American startups successfully raise capital and expand globally. And Thomas, this is Chloe, co-founder of the Elite Fund and CEO of Haven, whom I've spoken so highly of in our meetings. I smiled gracefully, offering my hand in greeting. "Hello, Thomas. It's a great pleasure to meet you today. The reputation of Apex Venture Partners and your leadership in the market precede you. It is truly admirable." Thomas took my hand, a firm, incredibly warm, and perfectly polite handshake. "Hello, Chloe. I am the one who must express my admiration for you. The meteoric rise of Haven and your business philosophy of prioritizing human value have inspired many cynical investors like us. Business isn't just about the lifeless numbers on a spreadsheet. Its core is the real value brought to society. You have proven incredible mettle and achieved something extraordinary." Thomas's voice was deep, resonant, and clear. He didn't use empty platitudes to compliment my appearance, like so many superficial men often did. He valued me for my battlefield competence, my sharp mind, and the massive achievements I had built from the ashes. The genuine respect radiating from his eyes and proper demeanor made me feel incredibly comfortable, sparking a deep, immediate affection. Eleanor, sophisticated and tactful, excused herself to greet some VIPs at the next table, leaving a private space for the two of us to converse. Thomas politely invited me out to the breezy balcony, which offered a sweeping panoramic view of the San Francisco Bay glittering with thousands of magical night lights. Our conversation flowed naturally, openly, without any forced awkwardness. Thomas spoke passionately about the sustainable investment philosophies his fund steadfastly pursued. He believed that companies that respected human value and upheld business ethics would always have the strongest vitality to survive global economic crises. In response to his heartfelt sharing, I told him about the tears of joy and radiant smiles of underprivileged women when they received their first seed money from the Elite Fund. We debated emerging tech trends, discussed how artificial intelligence could analyze user behavior to protect them from cyber risks, and bonded over classic philosophy books we both cherished. I quickly realized an astonishing level of empathy in Thomas. He listened intently to every word I said, occasionally smiling in agreement, and offered incredibly sharp, intelligent counterpoints. Beside this mature man, I didn't feel the need to tense up and act aggressively tough, nor did I fear being judged by prejudice. A feeling of peace and trust quietly seeped into my mind, gentle and soothing, like the evening breeze blowing off the bay. "Chloe," Thomas suddenly spoke, his eyes looking directly into mine, remarkably sincere and warm. "This weekend, if you aren't too tied up with your demanding schedule, I would love to officially invite you to tour a high-tech organic farm my fund invested in, just outside the city. The environment there is incredibly pure and quiet, perfect for relaxing after stressful days of intellectual work. I also want to take this opportunity to ask for your invaluable advice on expanding this farming model to create more jobs for female farmers in the region. Would you grant me the honor of your time for this trip?" I looked deep into his calm eyes, a soft smile playing on my lips, my eyes gleaming with an indescribable joy and anticipation. "I would be delighted. It sounds like a fascinating and meaningful field trip. I will rearrange my schedule to join you." The gala ended in absolute joy and contentment. I gently declined the event organizer's offer of a luxury car ride, opting instead to take a short walk back to my hotel to fully absorb the peaceful San Francisco night. The late-night streets were still bathed in the warm glow of streetlights. The distant sound of cars and the muffled laughter from sidewalk cafes painted a vivid, multicolored picture of life. I walked on the smooth pavement, head held high, taking a deep breath to fill my lungs with the essence of the world. The breeze caressed my soft hair. Looking back at the thorny road, I had traveled from a woman walking out of a cold mansion empty-handed with an unjust divorce petition, carrying immense humiliation. Now, I had personally claimed the absolute best for myself. A solid, brilliant career on a national scale. A massive, transparent fortune built by my own intellect and labor, and a heart that had completely healed, overflowing with love for humanity. I no longer carried any wounds or ghosts of the past, because I knew clearly that the sky ahead of me was vast and full of bright hope. The appearance of a talented, understanding man like Thomas felt like a soothing symphony playing at exactly the right moment, signaling that beautiful connections and complete happiness were opening their arms to welcome me. Under the brilliant golden streetlights, I broke into a radiant smile, confidently taking proud steps forward. I am Chloe, the woman who forged and proudly placed the most prestigious crown of my life upon my own head. Standing at the pinnacle of my career, I smiled, embracing true peace. The traitor who discarded gratitude now wandered penniless in exile, a highly fair instance of instant karma. A broken marriage is not the end. Blind sacrifice is the true tragedy. Women must always stand firmly on their own 2 feet, because the foundation of independence and kindness is the source of all happiness. Thank you all for taking your precious time to listen to my story today. If you found value and meaning in these reflections, please subscribe to our channel to continue accompanying us through more deep and resonant stories to come. Wishing you and your families eternal peace and abundant health.